Good evening and welcome in everyone to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. This is my post game. This was a stunner. I don't think anyone was expecting this, but man, it's a happy turn of good fortune for the Arkansas Razorbacks. John Calipari's return to Rupp Arena in Lexington, Kentucky. Multiple Razorbacks making their return. Former Kentucky Wildcats. This was amazing. 89-79. Arkansas was a double-digit margin underdog coming into this game. The Vegas line had Arkansas typically 10 or more points as the dog, and Arkansas wins by 10. This was a stirring performance. It was a stunning result. And we're going to talk mostly about the positives, but it was another game when we saw a ton of self-inflicted wounds, crazy stuff. And despite that, Arkansas played through it. Arkansas was sharp from the outset when Nellie Davis knocked down the opening triple of the game, give Arkansas a 3-0 lead. This was a Kentucky team that came in with an elite offense under Mark Pope in his first season. Not a great defense, but we really saw an Arkansas team that so many matchups has struggled with physicality. This is not a physical Kentucky team, and you saw that tonight. Arkansas had its way really from behind the three-point arc for the most part in the first half. Arkansas continued that hot shooting from three in the second half, but I thought Arkansas also did a better job of scoring around the basket in that second half, especially DJ Wagner kind of teaming up with a guy like Adu Thero, even Nellie Davis a little bit. But man, it was all hands on deck. Arkansas got big performances. We mentioned Calipari, the winningest coach in Rupp Arena history. That continued on tonight. He adds another one to an impressive record. This was a game that, despite Arkansas struggles in a 1-6 start play, where all eyes in college basketball were on this matchup. And an article that I put out earlier today about how important it was for Arkansas to win, but I really focused on a bad loss could be really, really ugly and signal all the talking heads, maybe even recruits, Arkansas's fan base, Kentucky's fan base that was already convinced that not only was Calipari, on the tail end in the twilight of his career, and maybe sort of a downward trajectory for him as a coach, his effectiveness, but a bad loss and this bad start in league play in this new destination at Arkansas might just conspire to have a lot more chatter about this program being in the tank and Calipari not only going down, but going down rapidly and in flames. And this, who knows what happens after this, but on one night, this team came in believing it could win. That is obvious. Basketball, any sport really comes down to matchups. It was a favorable matchup. I talked about Kentucky's lack of physicality, but who could have seen Arkansas having this kind of offensive night? 89-79. It's, by the way, it's Arkansas' second quad one win of the season. Arkansas also scored 89 points in the other quad one win. That was also against a ranked team, then number 14 ranked Michigan. That was way back on December 10th, nearly 2 months ago in New York City in the Jimmy V Classic. 89-87, a closer game at 89 points, the magic number. Arkansas has been so bad offensively. Up and down defensively with some good stretches, just self-inflicted wounds at both ends, even in close games. But Arkansas now, with this win, I don't think anyone saw it happening this way. If you told me coming into this that Kentucky was going to go 10 of 23 from three, and I figured and shot 2 more free throws than the Razorbacks in this game and won points in the paint by 6 plus 6, which was the case tonight, I would have said Arkansas got smoked. Not so fast. Arkansas overall shooting 32 of 58 from the field, 55.2%. It was blistering hot everywhere in that second half, but Arkansas was smoking hot from three on volume in both halves. Really on volume in the first half. Arkansas was 9 of 18, took 18 three-pointers in the first 20 minutes. And the Hogs were 4 of 7 in the second half. So, again, they started doing a better job of getting in the paint and scoring on drives, but still were knocking down threes and timely threes. 52%, 13 to 25. The 9 three-pointers was at halftime was a season high. I don't think Arkansas, maybe in a couple of SEC games, had made as many as 9 three-pointers. On the season was averaging just under 6, and you more than doubled up what your output is. 13. You made 13 out of 25, 52%. The Hogs limped a little bit at the free throw line. I think they made only 3 of their last 6. It didn't matter. They were in that area where they were up 11, 10, 9 points. Even when Kentucky got it down to 7 or 6 a couple of times, Arkansas would hit a timely 3, maybe get a turnover and get something easy on the other end and get it back to double digits. We've seen Arkansas the victim of that kind of bad rally, bad volley back and forth so many times, and this time the Razorbacks turned the table. And we can go across the board as a team. Arkansas won turnovers +6, 14-8, including 10-2 in steals. This is what this team was doing in non-conference play when it was a top 20 team in terms of fast break scoring. 17 points per game in fast break scoring coming into league play. And then that kind of vanished with all the other problems Arkansas have. Poor three-point shooting. Again, like issues on the offensive glass or keeping other teams from getting offensive rebounds. The toughness stuff. But, you know, Arkansas, you would thought the bread and butter throughout would be the turnover game. Well, tonight it was +6, 14-8, including 10-2 in steals. And what did they do with those live ball turnovers? Arkansas 18-5 advantage in fast break scoring in this game. That's more like it. That's more like it. That's got to be the Arkansas's best performance in league play when you look at the fast break comparison. Arkansas also had a 17 assist on those 32 made field goals. So the ball was hot, the ball was moving. You saw 2 Arkansas players in the backcourt, both starters, DJ Wagner and Nelly Davis having big assist nights. DJ with 8, Wagner with 5, and 6, excuse me. They combined for 14 assists out of those 17. And by the way, they also combined for 35 points. Nelly had 12 of his 18 points at halftime. DJ Wagner scored all 17 of his in the second half. We knew that Nelly Davis was coming off that big 18-point game and that close loss to Oklahoma. Arkansas's won 2 of its last 3 games since Boogie Flynn's been lost for the season with that thumb injury. But it could be 3 at a 3-0 stretch if not for some, some bad finish against the Sooners a week ago in Arkansas's last game that was at Bud Walton Arena. The prior game to that, Arkansas got its first SEC win against Georgia at home in also a dramatic fashion, a 3-point win. Game scored in the 60s. No one predicted going on the road, even against a team like Kentucky that likes to get up and down, play with pace, that Arkansas would be up for that kind of challenge against the Wildcats. I talked about Arkansas shooting, and we talked about some of the statistical areas where Arkansas won tonight and made a big difference. When you add that fast break effort with that 3-point shooting and the overall field goal shooting, it helped tell that story, but it also was just enough combination of goodness for Arkansas offensively to outpoint a Kentucky team that won in some categories. +3, not a big win for Kentucky on the glass. Offensive rebounds more than double Arkansas, up 19-4. +11 in second chance points, 14-3. They outscored Arkansas on bench scoring, 10-9. Points in the paint, I mentioned Kentucky, the Wildcats were +6 there, 38-32. But again, Arkansas was really good scoring. Some of those were mid-range shots that Arkansas knocked down. It was just good everywhere. But again, transition offense was splendid for Arkansas on a night where it also won the turnover battle. These are areas, again, where Arkansas was expected to be really good and was not coming into this game in league play. Certainly not this kind of shooting, especially from 3. But when you look across this, I mentioned Nelly Davis with the 18 points against OU in a loss. That was an inefficient game for him shooting. I mean, really bad numbers, but he did make 3 threes in that game. Well, he did the same tonight. 3 of 6 from distance, 7 of 14 overall. Only 1 of 2 at the foul line. He's a 90+% free throw shooter. But he had 18 points, 5 rebounds, those 6 assists I mentioned, 2 steals in 38 minutes in the starting lineup. So back-to-back 18-point games for Nelly. But I thought this was the first game of the season where he looked like an all-league caliber player, which was that's what he is preseason. He was on National Player of the Year watch list coming into this season. This was the first game where I thought from start to finish he looked the part. Now, he wasn't perfect. Got a technical foul late. Arkansas had some self-inflicted wounds in this one. It didn't matter. They played through it. They were better than their own problems. They were better than the opponent. Arkansas was a superior team. We've said all year long This team's not lacking talent. Boogie Flan's gone. Second leading scorer, one of the top facilitators in the country. I think he was Arkansas's best all-around player, especially when you looked at his ability to create shots at all three levels. Arkansas didn't have a shot creation problem tonight. Everything was working. The ball moved well. Guys fed teammates. We talked about some of those assist numbers for Nelly and DJ. But Adu Thero comes back. It's not just John Calipari. It's Adu Thero. 2 years spent in Lexington. What a game he had. He was solid in both halves. 21 points to lead the Razorbacks, 5 of 10 from the field. He knocked down a three, 1 of 3 from distance. Not the strength of his game. He kept it at a minimum, but he did knock one down. 10 of 12 at the free throw line. We've seen him struggle kind of like a yo-yo, up and down, but progressively he's gotten better at the foul line when you really look at Arkansas's last stretch of games, despite winning only one prior to tonight. Adu Thero steps up at the big time at the foul line. Sometimes, as good as Arkansas's offense was, you still have the possibility of having some lulls in there, but Thero, I mentioned Arkansas was getting more in that second half, getting to the basket, and then Thero was creating foul shots when he wasn't able to finish. He put a lot of pressure on Kentucky's back line as he continued to work around in the paint and getting to the basket. So a big night for him, scoring 8 big rebounds to lead the Razorbacks, 3 steals, a box score plus 15 in 34 minutes. Arkansas wins by 10. When he was on the floor, Arkansas was plus 15. I mentioned Nelly and his stats. What a big game he had. DJ Wagner, again, all 17 points in the second half, 7 of 13 shooting from the field, including 2 of 4 from 3. He was one of the ones that contributed that 3 of 6 free throw finish for Arkansas, only 1 of 2 kind of late in the game. But again, Arkansas was sitting on a 3-possession lead at that point. 2 or 3 possession, I think it was 3-possession lead, but 17 points, the 8 assists. I talked about 3 rebounds in 37 minutes. DJ Wagner comes back to Lexington, same as Adu Thero. They come back home. He was a freshman there last year, up and down season, ankle injury, high ankle sprain was problematic from him. A guy that's really struggled shooting from 3. His drive game's been the strength for him, aside from some big performances in non-conference, specifically Michigan, we talked about already, but DJ Wagner steps up big tonight for the Razorbacks. Big Z, he's been coming on. He was persona non grata for, really the start of league play in the last several games. Started in that 18-point loss in Missouri when he had a double-double. Did some good things for Arkansas in that home 2 game that when they split the 2 home games against Georgia and Oklahoma. By the way, those were Arkansas's first 2 quad 2 results of the season. Initially, the Georgia win was quad 1. Georgia's not doing very well. And the Bulldogs, that slipped out of the top 30 in net. So that became a quad 2 result, excuse me. So Arkansas is 1-1 in quad 2, but they pick up that second win tonight in quad 1 games. Arkansas is now 2-7 in quad 1 games. Here's what's interesting about this resume. Arkansas's got a lot more work to do for any chance at getting back on the bubble and working itself into an NCAA tournament at large conversation. But here's what's interesting. Arkansas is actually respectable in games away from home. 3-5, that's not horrible. 2-3 in true road games. So they were 1-2 in neutral site games. But both of their quad wins are away from home, and now they've got one in a true road game. The other one against Michigan, again, in neutral site. So there's already a decent building block as of now for a postseason resume. Arkansas needs more quality wins. Again, two of their last 3 games they've won. I mean, after an 0-5 start, that was unprecedented in school history in terms of how you start out SEC play. Arkansas's flipped a script there of late. I was one who came out and said after Arkansas lost at Oklahoma, I'm going to repeat what I said. I'm not going to back away from it. I said, Arkansas, you can put a fork in the Razorbacks in terms of postseason chances. Well, John Calipari and crew just shut me down, shut me up for the time being. That's right. I'll own it. And we'll see what happens. I mean, this could be just one of those magical nights. Calipari returns, Big Z back in the house, Thero back in the house, DJ Wagner back in the house. They all had huge nights. Carter Knox, the true freshman his game continues to come on and on. We're seeing him more and more not settle for bad shots and not taking a ton of shots, but taking good shots, staying in his wheelhouse. But man, his effort to get on the glass, to defend, to bring a physical presence on the wing. He's a big 6'6", 10 points, 4 of 7 from 3, 4 of 7 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3 for his 10 points, but 4 rebounds, a couple of steals, and he started again tonight, 34 minutes. So he was a Kentucky pledge signee that flipped to Arkansas when Calipari came on board. In fact, he and Big Z were, I think, the first two off the board to the Hogs, if I'm not mistaken. Z is a transfer. Carter Knox, the first of the recruited players for Calipari to flip. But you talk about what this meant, not only for Calipari, but again, these guys with the Kentucky, the Kentucky background, and even Knox as a signed player. And then Billy Richmond, the freshman. I mean, Arkansas's down to 8 deep. Billy Richmond, 4 points. That was there was a point early in the first half when Kentucky went up 18-12. I think Richmond got a steal and a dunk. He had a little mid-range shot, and I think that was part of Arkansas's little mini run there to get that game back, get back in that game and get it tied up. I think at 22 all, somewhere thereabouts, and then Arkansas just continued to work. To do better work than Kentucky was able to do. Now, Arkansas led by only 1 at halftime. I think the Hogs led by as many as 4 points in that first half. But Arkansas jumped out 4 or 5 minutes into the second half and built its first double-digit lead on a Big Z three-pointer that gave Arkansas an 11-point lead. I think it was, well, I'm not sure the exact score at that time, but I know Arkansas was up 11. Maybe it was 53-42 or 57-46 or something like that. No, it was 57-46. Because Arkansas led 46-45 at halftime, 57-46, and then Arkansas started doing some weird stuff. We saw this against Oklahoma. Arkansas, after trailing by 13, took a 6-point lead in the second half, and then on back-to-back defensive possessions, fouled three-point shooters that are on an elite free throw shooting team. Coming into that game, OU made all 6 free throws, tied it up, and from that point on, it was a back and forth. No team had more than a one-possession lead the rest of the way. That was about the midway point in the second half when those 2 3-point shooter fouls happened. And of course, Oklahoma ended up winning by 3, pulling that one out on the road. But tonight, Arkansas fouled a 3-point shooter in the first half. There were 3 or 4 times that Kentucky got and one opportunities. There were a double technicals called against Arkansas at the end. You had a flagrant 1 foul against Arkansas tonight. On Amari Williams, the big man, had a double-double and was really Kentucky's best player, he and Jackson Robinson. But that was a tough stretch, a tough patch of plays we've seen all year long with this Arkansas team. It seems like they're looking for ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But instead, Arkansas survived those plays. The back-to-back and one plays in the first half, Kentucky missed a free throw on the first one. The second and one opportunity, they missed the free throw. Nellie Davis got a lane violation, so they got another free throw opportunity and made that and one hold up. Then Arkansas fouled a 3-point shooter in the second half after going up by 11 points. The shot went in, so the free throw was made after a timeout. A 4-point play cut an 11-point lead down to 7. Arkansas had a flagrant 1 that sent Kentucky's big man Amari Williams to the line for 2 free throws. He made both. But when Kentucky got the ball on the ensuing possession, it did not score on that play. And I think on Arkansas's next defensive possession, the Razorbacks fouled on a Kentucky score, and the Wildcats missed the free throw on that. So I just kind of recapped all those self-inflicted wound situations, and Kentucky surprisingly missed a lot of opportunities, free throws in those opportunities where Arkansas just kept trying to give Kentucky more than it deserved, all right, to get back, stay within contact. But let's look at this. I went through Arkansas shooting numbers. We'll do that one more time because I'm going to jump to Kentucky so you have a side-by-side comparison. The Razorbacks, 32 of 58 from the field, 55.2%, including 13 of 25 from 3. To me, that's the story of the game. There's several stories, but this is just insane. 13 of 25 from 3, 52%. 12 of 16 from the foul line, 75%. Kentucky, 30 of 62 from the field. That's respectable, 48.4%. The Wildcats were shooting over 50% at halftime. So Arkansas did a better job of clamping down defensively. I thought Kentucky, the game got tighter for the Wildcats. There was pressure to win in that building. The stakes were high, not only because Kentucky needs to keep adding to what is a strong NCAA tournament resume, ranked 10th in NCAA tournament net, by the way, 3rd again offensive efficiency ratings in KenPom. But 30 of 62 overall, 48.4%, 10 of 23 from three. You think that's going to be good enough for Kentucky to win at home? 43.5%, only 9 of 18 at the foul line, 50%. Two more free throw attempts than Arkansas, three less makes. That's a situation where Arkansas took a small margin advantage and added it to an advantage. Despite how well Kentucky shot from three, Arkansas was better. A little more volume of takes and a lot and more volume and makes and nearly a 9% percentage point improvement shooting from three relative to what Kentucky did. And certainly Arkansas was better overall from the field, shooting 55% compared to Kentucky's 48. So I find when you start digging down in the numbers, it's very fascinating. But Kentucky left a lot of points on the foul line. And I mentioned some of those momentum swing situations where it was and ones or a triple and one or flagrant two, where they did make both free throws but didn't score on the ensuing possession. But they missed a lot of free throws in some of those game swing opportunities. And we've seen that be a problem for Arkansas in games where the Razorbacks just couldn't get over the hump. Now you're looking at this team at 2-6 in SEC play, and you're going back in your mind to games that were winnable against LSU on the road in that Oklahoma game I mentioned. If you had those two wins, and I know the old saying, this isn't horseshoes or hand grenades, close doesn't matter. But had you won those games instead of 2-6, you're 4-4 in league play, and you're still projected in as a NCAA tournament team. You're not that right now, but the fact is, Arkansas made a big statement tonight, winning by 10 on the road. But the other thing was, when you looked at Arkansas's road games in SEC play, aside from that 4-point loss at LSU a few weeks ago, LSU's not very good. Both Arkansas and LSU came into today's games with 1-6 records in league play. But Tennessee and Missouri are good. They're ranked teams and they're really good. Arkansas lost those road games by 24 points and 18 points respectively. And it was just implosion after implosion in both halves in those games that kind of fed that ugly monster. Tonight was a completely different story. This Arkansas team, the character that this team showed in this win in both halves, is not something anyone would have predicted or could have seen coming based on Arkansas's track record again through 7 games. The 0-5 starts, the worst ever Arkansas start since joining in SEC play to start SEC play since joining the league in 91-92. The 1-6 start matches the worst ever start through 7 games for the program. 2 teams, Pelfrey's 08-09 Hogs, and I think it was Musselman's Razorbacks last year started 1-6 in league play as well. So you've had back-to-back seasons where there's not been a lot to be excited about in this program, but Arkansas gets a huge win, the biggest win, the best win of the season. Again, the second quad one win, and it makes that Michigan win away from home a little bit more interesting and compelling because you've got 2 of them. Yeah, you've got 7 quad one losses. You're 1-1 in quad twos, but you've got a chance now because everything in front of you is quad one or quad two at this point. So you've got a chance to add a few more quad one wins. You're 3-5 away from home, 2-3 in true road games. That is absolutely respectable. Those are building blocks. It's not to say Arkansas is going to do anything from here. The Razorbacks have a road game midweek at Texas. Wow. How big is that one? Texas is not a bad team. This is a worthy SEC opponent, and it's another true road game. And Arkansas's got a round robin with the Longhorns. But this is an opportunity to pick up a quad one win again, add another one on Wednesday. Then you come home and you get Alabama at Bud Walton Arena a week from today. That place will be rocking, especially if Arkansas wins at Texas. Even if Arkansas doesn't, this changes the trajectory of things over the next several games because you've got Texas on the road, Alabama at home, and then you go on the road. You're back home again for a winnable game against LSU. So Arkansas can maybe find its way back into this. I said put a fork in this team a week ago tonight, and now after this, that's definitely not the case. It could end up being the case very soon if Arkansas loses the magic touch, and if this was just one special night with everything surrounding this situation, this game, and Calipari and his return. But at the same time, this is the kind of game. It was a great matchup for Arkansas. That's certainly the case. but it's the kind of game that maybe can turn your fortunes around because it's not too late. You still have 10 SEC games overall. I mentioned the upcoming slate. Then after Texas on the road, Bama at home, LSU at home, Arkansas's on the road for what looks like maybe back-to-back losses at Auburn and at A&M. Although A&M, after going on the road and doing this tonight, maybe a little more comparable to Kentucky than a team like not in terms of style, but in terms of maybe quality. Auburn's the best team in the country, and that's a road game. But Arkansas then would come back home to face, I think it's Missouri. They get another game against Texas. They'll play on the road against South Carolina and Vanderbilt, and then they'll finish the season in early March at home against a really good Mississippi State team. But there's some opportunities here that are now look like possibilities just based on this performance. The team that Arkansas has been leading up to this in league play, if Arkansas snaps back into that, but we thought last week, seeing what Arkansas did against both Georgia and Oklahoma, they turned it into grind games. They really drove down the pace, played at a pace that was favorable to the Razorbacks. And with a lack of three-point shooting and your best playmaker and shot creator lost for the season, it made sense. What Arkansas did tonight surprised me. It surprised me because they didn't grind this game down. Arkansas went toe-to-toe with a Kentucky team. When the Razorbacks knew the Wildcats were going to play at a high pace and try to get the score up. And it ended up being that kind of a game. And Arkansas was the better team playing this kind of game. I want to go back to Nelly Davis. I talked about his efficiency. I said it was the first game I've seen him look like an all-league kind of performer this season. I mean, so the record's 13-8. We're 21 games in, 10 more to go in the regular season, and it just now happens. But something a little bit interesting, he knocked down threes tonight. We mentioned that. He had a couple of catch-and-shoot, spot-up mid-range shots just outside the paint. I think one of those was. The other, but maybe both of them were, one in the first half, one in the second. But he used some good ball fakes tonight to create leverage for himself on some shots that he took and to pass out and get the ball moving and get the defense off balance. He has looked really uncomfortable when he's not catching shooting on the perimeter, when he puts the ball on the deck and drives. He really hasn't looked to score or get to the rim and score. There were times he didn't properly attack the rim. One in transition tonight, it was a blown transition opportunity. He's not explosive and he's not a big leaper, but he still has angles where it looks like he should finish and doesn't. But he created some opportunities for himself and others tonight, more so than I have seen of him, and it helps explain his efficiency on those 18 points to go with those 6 assists. This was his best game, not just because of the production and the efficiency, but our eye test, for me, told me he was actually creating opportunities multiple times in both halves that I just haven't seen him do all year. Most of what he's gotten has been off the creativity of others. Again, spot up, catch and shoot. A few little here and there downhill buckets, but not a lot of shot creation or nuance in his craft. And when you start talking about, using the head fake to get a defender up in the air or off balance and he drives in and then he starts picking and choosing a little bit, if he can add to that and get comfortable, this makes Arkansas a dangerous team, even when maybe the matchups aren't as favorable as they are tonight, because you need more than Adu Thiero, who's consistently been really good for Arkansas. You need more guys than just one guy can be consistently good. And he and Jonas Adu is preseason all SEC guys and proven players from where they came from before and guys that have tasted near ultimate success in the NCAA tournament. You would like to see both of them join Adu Thiero now that Boogie's out. Jonas Adu with another poor performance tonight after not having a bad game in Arkansas's loss at OU. But he did a few good things. He blocked a shot. I think he altered a couple and affected a couple of shots around the basket that helped Arkansas in there. He's the one that committed the flagrant 1 foul. Trevor Brazile, 5 points tonight. Only played 10 minutes, 2 of 3 from the field, including 1 of 2 from 3. So TB got in on that 3-point shot party. 2 rebounds, a block, and a steal in his 10 minutes. So, relative to the time he was on the floor, he was productive. But again, you go back to Big Z, his 14 points, 5 of 8 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3. And a couple of his threes, at least 2 of them, were as I recall, were big shots that changed momentum when Kentucky maybe went on a 5-0 run or cut that double-digit deficit down, a little bit. It seemed like Big Z stepped up once or twice and knocked down a timely three to help add back to that separation that Arkansas enjoyed most of the second half. Built a double-digit lead about 4 or 5 minutes into that second half and effectively maintained it. Again, it would dip down a little bit, but they'd get it back there. And look, in my game story headline, I put stun number 12 Kentucky. Arkansas was up 14 points with about 2 minutes left. And if they'd have won this game by 15 or more, I was going to add in stunned and spanked number 12 Kentucky, but Arkansas didn't get the 15-point win. They'll settle for the 10-point win. It's a double-digit victory on the road against the 12th ranked team in the country. And let's not, Kentucky's 4-4 in league play now, 15-6 overall, but let's not forget this team has beaten the second ranked team in the country in Duke. This team has beaten Tennessee on the road, just coming off that win. This team has beaten Florida at home. It's defeated Texas A&M. It has another big road win. I'm trying to remember who that was. Knocked off another ranked team on the road. Was it Mississippi State? Kentucky's got an impressive resume, some really good wins. Beat Gonzaga in non-conference play earlier in the year when the Zags were ranked, I think, 7th in the country. Now, that's a team with 6 losses and no longer ranked, but still, Gonzaga, it's a Kentucky team with a hell of a resume. It's also a team that's been shellacked by 20 points by Ohio State, lost at Clemson, lost at Vanderbilt. It's not a perfect team, but again, a team with a bunch of impressive wins, a surefire NCAA tournament team. It's going to be one of the higher seeds in the NCAA tournament, one of the better seeds if the team doesn't just implode from here on out. But again, top 10th ranked in net. Michigan, I think, is still ranked somewhere in the team, maybe somewhere between 10 and 20, somewhere in that range. So Arkansas's got 2 they're not just quad 1 wins, they're away from home, and that makes them even better. And they're not just quad 1 wins away from home, because if you win a quad 1 against a top 50 ranked team in net, away from home, on a neutral side, it counts as a quad 1. And top 75 on the road, a true road game, counts as a quad 1. These are 2 quad 1 wins away from home against teams ranked in the top 15 or so of net. So to me, that adds more quality to those quad 1 wins. And that's why I say the overall record away from home and including true road games is respectable. And then you throw those measures in, it might shrink just a little bit. Arkansas, that it might add a little more cushion, to Arkansas's margin for error. Say if the Hogs could find a way to get to 7-11 to finish out the SEC, that's not inconceivable at this point. Based on the way Arkansas played through the first 7 league games, it didn't seem possible. But right now, it seems conceivable that Arkansas, to get their 2-6 now, to finish 7-11, the Razorbacks would need to be 5-5. Go just split these games. At 7-11 going to the SEC tournament, if you pick up some more quad 1 wins in there and say you get to 5 or 6 in the quad 1, and you stay even or so in quad 2s, you've given yourself an opportunity to be on that bubble, maybe on the correct side of the bubble, going in the SEC tournament. I'm just kind of throwing that stuff out there. Now, let's say Arkansas goes 6-4 in these final 10 games. The Razorbacks would be 8-10 in the SEC. And that's going to be enough, I think, going into the SEC tournament to lock up an NCAA tournament bid. So where there seemed like no hope, it wasn't based on the fact that there weren't enough games left. It was based on the fact that Arkansas was getting blown out on the road against quality teams in this league and was 1-3 at home and finding ways to not show poise, not show the kind of grit necessary to pull out enough games to stack the amount of wins you need to be in that postseason conversation beyond the SEC tournament. A win like tonight with 10 more games to go, you're still technically not even midway through league play. One more game to say that. And that's, again, Texas on the road Wednesday. If Arkansas finds a way to go in, and that's a long-time rival from the old Southwest Conference days, it's a storied history, not just in football, Not in it was in basketball as well. A lot of great matchups historically between these two schools, and Arkansas got the better of it over the years. You would love to welcome Texas into the SEC in basketball with a win on their home court, and you know you got them coming back to Fayetteville later. That would be huge for this Razorback team. I think Arkansas opened the door and potentially saved its season tonight. The flip side of that is it's one game. It was one of those nights where maybe there was a little added pressure for Kentucky wanting to protect home court and give Mark Pope a win over the winningest coach ever in Rupp. 15 years prior to this at Cal was there, and you had former Kentucky players coming in with something to prove tonight. There was an extra edge, it looked like to me, with some of these guys tonight. Adu Thero's been given this all year. But guys like DJ Wagner, Big Z, even Carter Knox, and again, I want to go back to something else. Carter Knox and Billy Richmond continue to show improvement. That's one thing about this Calipari team, even with all the losses, was that in these last few games, you could really continue to see Knox embracing his role, Richmond helping Arkansas, Big Z showing more production, more effectiveness, not a perfect player by any stretch. He's still got, has tough times with physicality around the basket. Let's look at some just real quick. I'm going to go through Kentucky's couple of, 2 or 3 of their individual guys. Amari Williams, the big man, 22 and 11 tonight, but only 4 of 7 at the foul line. The former Hog, Jackson Robinson, haven't even mentioned that. He was playing against his old school. 20 points, 6 of 9 shooting, was efficient from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, but only 4 of 8 from the foul line. So Kentucky's 2 best players tonight, both over 20 points or more, a combined 8 of 15 from the foul line. So these were the guys that were kind of their go-to guys, the ones that were giving the most production. So if you're going to create foul shots and generate those FTAs, you got to make them to win a game like this. Those guys didn't make enough of them. The Oklahoma transfer, Ortega Owe, 10 points tonight, really had some good drives to the basket. He played with some physicality from the wing at times, but he didn't shoot the ball well overall. And then there was another shooter that finished with 12 points tonight. Hit a couple of big threes. He's the guy, I can't pronounce his name, that hit the triple and one that cut Arkansas' second half lead. One of its 11-point leads in the second half down to 7. I think it went from 6. I think it went from maybe, I'm not sure what it was. Was it 58-47? Triple and one, cut it to 58-51. And then Arkansas did enough work to get it back to double digits. I think DJ Wagner went for a stretch there where he was anything Kentucky did well, he was just matching it with a drive, or he had a couple of big pull-up 3-point shots. I mentioned the timeliness of Big Z. How timely was it for DJ to step up and get all 17 of those points in the second half? Arkansas absolutely needed that. In a game where you scored 46 points in the first half and had a 1-point lead, you wondered coming in out of that halftime break, was Arkansas prepared to not have a letdown and fall apart in the second half? Let's not forget Arkansas's had a lot of bad first halves and been stronger and better in the second half. You wondered if they were going to have, they hung in there in that first half, but do they really have the chops to continue to shoot at this level and continue to bring it against this Kentucky team on its home court in the second half? And Arkansas doubled down on it, built that 1-point lead, ran it out to double digits again early in that second half, and then it was just Arkansas's game tonight. Arkansas was never truly threatened. And I mentioned some of the self-inflicted wounds and some of the silly stuff. It kind of prolonged this game a little bit. I mentioned the 3 of 6 free throw shooting at Arkansas finishes 12 of 16, but at that point they were 9 of 10, 90%. So they finished 3 of 6, and some of that might have been fatigue. Remember, Arkansas only goes 8 deep. Richmond and Brazil and Adu each only played 10 minutes. Now that's enough for each of those guys to give other guys a break, but effectively 5 guys played the heavy lifting bulk of your minutes tonight, and those were your starters. And Calipari dialed up the right lineup. Remember, that starting lineup with Big Z in there in place of Jonas Adu meant that 4 former Three former Kentucky players and a Kentucky signee in Carter Knox were in Arkansas' starting lineup, and all 5 starters scored in double figures tonight. I went through the individual player stats, but I didn't actually put it in that package and say all 5 of the starters hit double figures. It's obvious. Kentucky had 4 in double figures. Arkansas had 5. But I think also the contributions from Richmond and Brazil, even though they didn't score a lot, mattered in this game. It helped Arkansas, have a all hands on deck kind of a feel to it, because it certainly felt that way. Even Jonas Adu, I mean, it wasn't a good night for him, but a couple of rebounds, a block, and I think, he had a block in his 10 minutes. I don't know that he got a rebound, but he did have a block, and he altered 2 or 3 more shots that Kentucky missed, and Arkansas secured the ball and ran out. Kentucky did have a stretch in the second half. I didn't talk about this, where the Wildcats were getting on the offensive glass. Arkansas would have a good, solid defensive possession, but couldn't close it out with a defensive rebound. But Kentucky struggled at times, even after that, to still knock down shots. Now, they did end up with, again, their biggest winning advantage tonight in any statistical category was the second chance points, 14-3 off those offensive rebounds, 9-4. So if you were looking at something that was clicking for Kentucky a little bit there, it was that. Points in the paint +6, but again, Arkansas did a much better job in the second half. The Hogs were -10, doubled up in points in the paint at halftime, despite leading by a point. They were being outscored. They had been outscored 20-10 in the paint. So they were doubled up, -10. So they closed that gap. They closed that margin down. We talk about it all the time. Stay close in the margins. You don't win. Maybe win a few by a close margin, but you gotta check some boxes with a little bit more cushion in certain areas. And Arkansas found that again tonight in fast break, in the turnover department, and the shooting department across the board, more efficient than Kentucky everywhere. And the volume of threes sings a beautiful song for these Arkansas Razorbacks. 13-25 again, 52%. John Calipari, congratulations to him. What a big night. The bobblehead's excited. I know the Razorback fans are excited about this one. 89-79. Arkansas goes into Rupp Arena, upsets 12th ranked Kentucky. The Razorbacks were the superior team. They were. This one game, there's no round robin this year. Shame on the SEC for not matching these teams up in Bud Walton Arena. And maybe Mark Pope and his crew are glad about that after tonight. But the Razorbacks now have some sense of purpose in this season other than keeping it from being a complete and total collapse. They've actually got a chance now to do some work to get themselves back in the picture for the NCAA tournament. I thought it was really strange that John Calipari had continued to talk about his team finding a chance to get themselves back in the race. When you have as many games that are left that you do, it's not only mathematical possible, but there are reasonable paths you can pick to if you assume the team's going to turn the corner in some of these on-court issues that have just been too problematic up to this point. And he was talking about his team after it lost on the road to Tennessee, then lost at home to Ole Miss, then lost at home to Florida. He kept saying, I have a good team. We're just not winning right now. And that's on me. I've got to find a way to get these guys to improve. But he went from saying that just 2 or 3 weeks ago that I've got a good team to recently, in his most recent press conference, to preview this game. By the way, that was on Thursday. It was the first pregame preview that he's done with the media this season. And it makes sense going back to Rupp. But in that one, he didn't talk about having a good team. He says, I got a great group of guys. Well, maybe now he was right in both occasions. There's a possibility he was naive about his team, but maybe he's right. He's got a great group of guys. He's getting them to buy in. He certainly did tonight. Everything clicked for Arkansas. And I go back to my surprise factor about how well the ball moved, about how most of the shot taking made sense, and how Arkansas was able to do this without Boogie Fland. Again, the team's, I can understand the grind games and why you did that and why it made sense. And it gave you your best chance to win right after losing Fland at home against Georgia and Oklahoma. But I didn't see this coming. And Fland again was the team's best shot creator, and not only for himself as being able to create shots at all 3 levels, but a playmaker for others. So this is, again, refreshing for an Arkansas team that, will play shorthanded the rest of the season. Kentucky was without Lamont Butler, its veteran lead guard. You saw Jackson Robinson at the point. And even though he scored 20 points and was efficient from the field, I mentioned the poor free throw shooting for Robinson. I thought DJ Wagner and other Razorbacks got into him physically and didn't give him clear paths. Now, he had a few good drives to the basket in this game, probably a handful, but at other times I thought Arkansas disrupted where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. And so on a night when Kentucky was still efficient from the field, there were times where I thought Arkansas muddied the waters enough. And part of that was the defensive job that Arkansas's backcourt did on Jackson Robinson as a ball handler and an offense initiator. And then I just think, again, I go back to the talent standpoint. Even without Boogie Fland, Arkansas's talent level night in and night out is as good as any in this league for the most part. Maybe not equivocally, but for the most part. And that was true tonight. I thought Arkansas's talent was better. I think in many of the games so far in league play, it's been better. It certainly looked that way tonight. But Arkansas had not played like a team. This is the best team effort, the most cohesive. Again, the self-inflicted wounds aside, it wasn't like guys were just going mano a mano and nobody could miss. There was a purpose and a rhythm and a cohesion amongst this in this team, a chemistry that I just haven't seen. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the clutch gene. I haven't seen the poise gene. I hadn't seen the, play through adversity gene. I just hadn't seen it. Georgia was an example of that. But the Bulldogs, again, are not a great team. They're an okay team. And that was at home. And Arkansas was maybe due to at least get on the board with a win. All wins are precious, and you'd start at 0-5, so you don't take that for granted. But even in that game, Arkansas trailed by 15 points in both halves. So it wasn't even a clean game. It was just a game that Arkansas put the hammer down late and figured out a way to win it. This was a game where in both halves, Arkansas looked like the kind of team that was projected ranked 16th in the first Associated Press poll coming into the season and projected top 4 in the SEC. That's what Arkansas looked like tonight. Again, is this a one-off? Is this going to be an outlier? We'll see what happens moving forward. But for one night, Arkansas made a statement in the SEC, and they've just got to build on it. All right, I'm going to sign off, not quite 50 minutes in. I want to thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I don't think I ever introduced myself. I'm Kevin McPherson. If you haven't done it already, it helps us out. Please hit subscribe, like, and share. The Arkansas Razorbacks, again, stunned. 12th ranked Kentucky, 89-79 on the road, Rupp Arena. John Calipari's big return, packed house, a lot of national attention on this one, all day long on ESPN, primetime game on ESPN, the mothership. Had all the bells and whistles, and the best part of it was Arkansas picked itself up off the mat. Tonight, the Hogs are not the laughing stock of the SEC. In fact, there's an opportunity to make this a positive and make this into the kind of season that could lead to the NCAA tournament. Not predicting that, not saying I believe that will happen, but I believe that this is the kind of game that could spark that. So until next time, hopefully we have more good things to talk about. Thanks for being here. We'll see you then.